That plate of spaghetti al pomodoro, it's younger than the United States. And for 200 years, Italians were terrified the tomato would kill them. Tonight, the truth. Andiamo.
Picture it, a plate of spaghetti, glistening red, a little basil resting on top. To the whole world, this is Italy, as old as the Colosseum, as eternal as Rome itself. We imagine Roman emperors twirling pasta in tomato sauce, Renaissance painters wiping red from their lips, but none of that ever happened, not one bite. Because for most of Italian history, this plate in front of you simply did not exist. The tomato wasn't just missing from the kitchen, it was a stranger, a foreigner, and for a very long time, a suspect. Our story begins not in Italy, but an ocean away. The tomato is a child of the Americas, grown for centuries by the peoples of Mexico and the Andes. The Aztecs called it tomatal. When Spanish ships carried it back across the Atlantic in the 1500s, Europe had never seen anything like it, and the Italians gave it a name that tells you exactly how they first saw it: pomodoro. Pomodoro, the golden apple. Because the very first tomatoes to reach Italian soil weren't red at all. They were yellow, a small, strange, golden curiosity from a new world. And here is where the trouble starts. Botanists looked at this newcomer and recognized its family, the nightshades, cousins of plants that could kill. So Europe decided the tomato was beautiful, exotic, and dangerous. For nearly 200 years it was grown only as an ornament, a decoration for gardens and grand tables, admired but never eaten. And the rich seemed to prove the fear true. They dined off fine pewter plates, heavy with lead. Pile acidic tomatoes onto that metal, and the acid pulled the lead right out, and the diners fell ill. The tomato took the blame. The poison apple, they called it. A fruit too deadly to eat. But fear is a luxury. It's easy to be afraid of a fruit when your belly is full. Down in the south, in Naples, loud and crowded and poor, hunger had no patience for superstition. The common people couldn't afford pewter or silver. They ate from clay and from wood. And so, with nothing to lose, they did the unthinkable. They ate the tomato, and they did not die. Instead, they discovered what the aristocrats never would, that under the southern sun, this golden red fruit grew sweet and rich and impossible to resist. The food of the poor was about to become the pride of a nation. Slowly, the tomato crept from the garden onto the plate. In the year 1692, in Naples, a cook named Antonio Latini wrote down something remarkable, a recipe for tomato sauce. Salsa di pomodoro alla spagnola, the Spanish way. Tomatoes, a little chili, onion, herbs, salt, and oil. It is the first tomato sauce ever recorded in Italy. But notice, it was not for pasta, not yet. The two great loves of Italian cooking were still living separate lives. Pasta on one side of the city, tomato on the other. They had not yet met. And pasta, by then, was everywhere in Naples. Neapolitans ate so much of it that the rest of Italy mocked them. Mangia macaroni, the macaroni eaters. It was street food, sold from carts, eaten with bare hands by men standing in the road. All it was missing was a partner. And in Naples, at last, the two found each other. By the early 1800, tomato and pasta were being cooked together. In 1837, a Neapolitan nobleman named Ippolito Cavalcanti published a cookbook with the recipe written in local dialect. Vermicelli, dressed in tomato. The marriage was official, and the dish the whole world would one day call Italian was, in truth, barely older than the railway. From there it spread like fire. In 1861, the scattered kingdoms became one country, Italy, and the humble red plate of the south traveled north to become a symbol of the entire nation. New factories learned to seal tomatoes inside cans, so the riches of the summer harvest could feed a kitchen all year long. And then came the great wave, millions of Italians crossing the ocean, carrying their recipes not on paper, but in memory.
It is such a big memory.
In the crowded tenements of New York and Buenos Aires, with cheap canned tomatoes
is
on
changing
every
today.
shelf, they cooked the food of home, and the world tasted it, and the world fell in love. A fruit once feared as poison had become the very flavor of comfort. So the next time someone tells you tomato sauce is ancient, eternal, the soul of old Italy, now you'll know the truth. It is a story barely 2 centuries old. A story of a frightened continent, a hungry city, and a golden apple from across the sea that nobody trusted. Until someone, somewhere in Naples, was hungry enough to take the very first bite.
The world's most Italian dish, born from a fruit they once feared as poison. Funny how that works, no? Next time, the French croissant's Austrian secret. Subscribe and stay hungry. Ciao.